So I have been wanting to make Tiana for a very long time, but I wanted to make sure that we did her justice because she is one of the most realistic and hardworking princesses ever. And I thought it would be really nice to bring in somebody who epitomizes Tiana and who is also a costuming industry professional. So I would like to introduce you to my friend, Ginger Nichelle.
Hi, Nikki. Thank you for having me here. I am Ginger Nichelle, and a little about me. I have been working in the fashion industry about 10 years now, including my little unpaid internships. And I've also started my own brand called Elle Royalty Clothing, which it is inspired by Barbie, heritage and fashion, and everything pretty and pink.
So do you want to tell everybody how we met?
Yeah, sure. We met working at Illuminate, the costume shop and dance company that is in North Hollywood. I am the wardrobe supervisor of the costume shop, and we needed help. Hey, does anybody know a costumer that knows how to sew, can come in quick? And I got connected to you, and I was so happy actually when you came in, because I was just like, here's a needle, you flick, you sew this fiber optic and these costumes, because I have to do so many other things because I was like a project manager for some reason of this project, not just wardrobe supervisor. But it was a lot of fun. I think us working together on that Black Eyed Peas project, because then you could see how crazy things was. And then we worked together for the Vegas show that was supposed to debut in 2020, but things happened.
COVID.
But yeah, so that didn't get to happen. But I was happy also when you came in to work on that, because there were so many times, I don't even remember if I told you, but there were so many times where I felt like, okay, I don't even know what to do anymore. Like my brain has nothing left. And you would come through and just be like, well, how about if you do this? Or how about if you do this? And how about if you do this? Like you would come through with like 5 ideas, and I'm like, thank you.
You were so exhausted. I could tell you just completely checked out. And I was nervous because, you know, I don't want to like be overbearing or anything, but I was like, it seems like she's been given way too much load. So I was like, can I help a little? Like, would this help? Would that help? So it was a very, very fun experience. And it was really cool being able to see our artwork on the stage together.
Yeah, and that was so fun, because even hearing that Black Eyed Peas song, Ritmo, like hearing it drives me crazy. Just because of how crazy that weekend was, that we basically had a weekend to make those costumes. But and it was really fun, and everyone looked really cool, and there was no way I could have done it by myself. There was absolutely no way that would have happened by myself.
Exactly why I wanted to bring you in on this project, because you are one of the hardest working people I know. When we were working at the costume studio, we were like, please, Ginger, eat, sleep. And that, I think, is just like the epitome of Tiana. Her restaurant, yeah, she's all about the cooking, but there's so many more things that go into having a restaurant. And she grinded every day until she was thoroughly exhausted and missing the fun parts of her life because she had this dream. And I think you just completely epitomized that. So you launched your channel this month, which is super exciting. What is your channel called, and what can we expect to see from it?
Well, my channel is really going to be filled with fashion advice, entrepreneur advice, and really just some candid talk about what it's like being an indie designer living in LA. So my channel is really going to be educational, but more just giving you straight talk as opposed to giving you, you know, the glamorous part of design where you see fashion shows and you see photo shoots and models and clothing and celebrities. I'm like, okay, we've done all that, but I'm going to bring it down and say how you get there and how to really build the brand and really design and what you need to think about if you want to become a designer.
That's fantastic. I can't wait to see what you come out with. Speaking of design, let's talk about Tiana's design. We know based on our research that Princess and the Frog is set in the 1920s, based on the fact that many of the characters wear drop-waist dresses and cloche hats, which were very fashionable in the 1920s. So obviously, Tiana's dress is not 1920s in any capacity, And we know that John Lasseter really wanted her to fit in with the lineup of the rest of the Disney princesses, especially of the Golden Age, which really followed this 1940s, 1950s silhouette. But in our research, we found that Lorelei Bove actually had some concept art that she designed for Tiana's wedding dress. And so she made some swampy 1920 gowns that were really beautiful, but unfortunately we just didn't get to see that in the final product. It was in the 1920s robe de style with a very long drop waist and large pannier hips, which I think would be super fun to make. So let me know if you want me to make that. So in terms of Tiana's design, what did you find in your research?
Oh, well, I found nothing. No, I'm kidding. I found out that the Disney animators modeled Tiana after the voice actress, Anika Noni Rose. So she had no idea that this was going to happen. And when she first saw the first kind of cut of the animation, it like brought her to tears because she didn't know that not only was she going to voice act Tiana, but she was actually going to like be Tiana. So I just found that just to be so beautiful and a really cute story. When looking up wedding inspiration at the time, you really see that Tiana's dress was inspired by bridal gowns at the time of when the movie came out, because the Vera Wang collection, for example, you see a lot of sweetheart necklines, you see a lot of boutonnieres on the waistline, you see cascading skirts over big ball gowns. So I really feel like you can see the connection between wedding dress trends at the time and now, and Tiana's movie coming out. So I think it's actually really cool that they looked at trends at the time also to help kind of give them inspiration for her final dress.
So as far as the build of the dress goes, what are some things that you have to have in the dress?
Well, just working as a party princess, you know, the things that I really need is girls to be secure and stable. If there's any way to really just build them up, whether it's with straps or just inner construction, that would be most important for me.
So in order to support the bust, maybe we could do like a corset inside to really just keep it up and have that boning hold it all in place. And then maybe the flowers could hide any possible cleavage that somebody has, just in case. You never know how much cleavage somebody's going to get.
Right.
Also, one of the things I noticed at the park is that it feels very bulky at the waist. And you know, John Lasseter really wanted that 40s, 50s, very cinched waist look. So what I was thinking is to stop all that bulking at the waist, we could do a yoke on the white petal part of the skirt and the yellow part of the skirt to drop all that bulk down lower at the hip, but really tight at the waist. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I love that idea because I'm thinking about when I've made my first dress like 10 years ago, and I can't believe it's been that long, but yeah, I did everything to the waist and it was really bulky. So actually that's amazing. I wouldn't have even thought of that. That's a great idea. Can I make one request?
Sure.
Can the dress have pockets somewhere just to hide little trinkets? Can we have some pockets, please?
So we gotta have space for beignets.
Yes, that too. Having a little snack helps.
Yes. Fabrics do you think we should use?
You know, I'm thinking that we should do something very light, very airy, just because, you know, at that point where Tiana's wearing her final dress, like she's changed, she's went on a whole journey, she's blossomed into someone else. So I think just something really reminiscent of a flower just in bloom and being light and airy, like chiffons or something just really airy.
No, I totally agree. I noticed that the Parks uses some sort of velvet type fabric. What are your thoughts on that choice?
You know, I would not choose velvet for the dress. I think it's too heavy. I just feel like you wouldn't wear velvet in a swamp after you know, were a frog for half your movie or whatever. I think you would want something as light as a lily pad or a flower, something really showing that you've blossomed into this new princess.
I do have this fabric that a friend gave me. What do you think?
Ooh.
Like vines and stuff?
I love it. There's little vines like etched it. Oh, it's so pretty. I love that. And I love the color too, because it's a nice kind of soft green color as opposed to being either too dark or too, you know, too much. I really love it, but I think it can get a little extra, and if we could add some rhinestones to it, that would be amazing. Just to have a little bit of glitter and extra little bit of magic.
Perfect. Yes, I agree. You can't be a princess without rhinestones.
Exactly.
Because the color of the dress changes so much between her artwork of the merchandise, the park, the movie itself. I was thinking soft buttercream would look really good at the base of the bottom of the dress. But I noticed that downtown a lot of times the dye lots are still just a little too saturated. So I was thinking, when I made my best friend's wedding dress, we took a really soft blush pink taffeta and put a couple layers of a cream chiffon over to give just like a hint of that pink color.
Ooh, okay.
That with the buttercream and like a cream organza for the bottom layer.
Oh, I love that actually, because definitely white would be too much. It would have to be a cream, or like you said, like a buttercream. And I love actually the layering part, because I think having a little bit of organza as the layer will give even just a little bit more shimmer.
What are your thoughts of an ivory versus a pure white for her flower petals at the chest and at the bottom?
I definitely wouldn't want white. I think white, it just might clash, especially with the fabric that we were already talking about for the green and the petals. So I would definitely say the ivory. I think that would just match the buttercream so much better.
So I was looking up the flowers that could possibly be the one that is the boutonniere on her hip, and I narrowed it down to about 2 flowers. One is the magnolia, which is the state flower of Louisiana, and it's said to symbolize nobility, dignity, womanly beauty, and gentleness. Or there is the gardenia, which is also to New Orleans, and it's said to stand for hospitality, grace. Yes.
And
So which one do you think would be best for her boutonniere?
Oh, well, those are actually really great choices, and I think both of them actually embody Tiana. But I would want, I really think the magnolia just would look so pretty on her dress, and I think just the femininity and coming into womanhood and all those things kind of translate to what the movie was really about. And she couldn't dance before, and Naveen taught her to dance, and I think just her blossoming into a new person that she didn't really think about or anything like that is perfect. So I would go with the magnolia.
Cool. Okay. So what accessories does Tiana need?
Well, since she is a princess, she's going to need a big crown, a big extra crown, so definitely with some rhinestones on them. It needs to be glimmery and shiny. She also needs to have a big ring from Naveen on her glove. I want the ring like over the glove. I mean, I know that's I don't know, maybe not so princessy, but I like the idea of having the gloves on and then the ring on top, and it's a nice big ring. I don't think she really needs a necklace, just because the petals are coming up, and I just think it might be a little too busy at her neck. But maybe just some chandelier earrings, just to kind of a little extra from the crown down to the face, and it's just all in one. She's just glowing, basically, because she became a princess. I mean, why not?
Sure. So for Tiana's hair, we know that it would have been straightened and bobbed, as was the style from the 1920s, or at least pulled back in a really low bun with the sides kind of waved. But they didn't really do that, and we know that they wanted to keep her more 40s, 50s Disney style. But I also feel like maybe there was some limitations in the animation, or who knows. So what are your thoughts on the hair? What can we do? What would you like to see done?
Well, I definitely agree. I think that there must have been, maybe there were some limitations because her hairstyle was just kind of pulled back. But I would love to see, some kind of more natural looking hair, because I think at the time when the movie came out, there wasn't so much of a push or even just a realization that we can wear our natural hair, how it grows out of our head, screw everybody else. We're going to wear our hair as it naturally comes out of our head. And I think, you know, with the natural hair movement, really gaining speed, especially now, you know, during the pandemic, and you really can't go out and, you know, handle your hair. So you really just learning how to love your hair. I just think doing something more natural with her hair, that it has still the natural kinks and coils and curls and beautiful hair that Black women have, and figuring out a way to like keep that, but also keep the aesthetic of how the movie is what I'm thinking.
Okay, cool. I'm totally down for that. In the movie, her hair is straight pulled back. What do you think of giving her a little bit of a bang, since all the other princesses have some sort of bang action going on?
I love a bang. I mean, yeah. I love me a bang. So I think a nice swoopy bang would actually give it just a little bit extra glamour, and that's what we want to do with Tiana, is just really glamour up. So yes, I am all for an extra bang.
Cool.
With our design planned, it was time to get building. I already had the underlayers for my model, so I moved on to the underskirt. I began by pinning my hoop skirt onto my dress form, and then laying some cheap fabric that I didn't care about over top to start patterning out the leaves while I waited for my fabric to dry. I used a Sharpie to draw my lines out, that way I could see them from far away, and was able to get the waist pretty smooth, although I did have a dart at the side that I decided to use later to my advantage. Now that I've patterned out the green layer, I need to figure out how wide each of the white petals needs to be, as well as how long. Now I know I'm putting a 6-inch yoke, so I need to start my measurement from about here down to the tip, and then figure out the circumference of this hoop, and then divide that by 10. So this hoop is about 54 inches around, which divided by 10 gives me about 5.4 inches, but that's awfully small. That's not going to give me the volume that each of these petals needs, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to double it. I'm going to make each petal about 10 inches and then overlap them on this seam, making them taper down to about 5 inches here and then about nothing at the tip. So let's go do that. So I mocked up the two petals. They started about 10 inches wide and tapered down to about 5 inches wide here, and then to basically nothing here. And I think that's going to give me just enough of the peak of the like buttercream color. And then here you can see the green layer. This is the widest piece. Of course, we're going to have another piece that comes down here, and then the top leaf. And once the yellow layer with the cream organza gets over top, that's going to fluff it out. So I think we are good here. Let's move on to making the base layer. I think my fabric should be dry by now. Okay, so my fabric is dry now, which means I can get to cutting out how much I need for the bottom layer, or in this case, ripping. So I'm going to keep the selvage at the bottom of the skirt. That way I don't have to work extra hard for hemming. The selvage makes it really nice and easy to do just a straight rolled hem. I want it to be about there. I'm going to give it a little extra. And then I'm going to give myself about 1 inch up top here. So right about there. And so this is going to get all gathered down into here, creating a lot of fluff, and make it really voluminous so that we don't see the hoops, because we never want to see the hoops through our skirt. But I also have a layer of organza that I'm going to put over the top, so let me go grab that, and we're going to do basically the same thing. So for the organza, I'm going to basically repeat the same process that I did for cutting the yellow layer, but this time, to make sure that they line up properly, find the selvages, line them up, and line up the raw edges. And make sure they're pretty taut so you get an accurate measurement. And then I'm actually going to cut the organza a little bit longer just in case. So I'm going to give myself like an extra 1.5 inches, 2 inches. Like so. Oh, sometimes some fabrics are a little trickier and you need to cut a little more than the initial snip. There we go. I'm gonna save all my scrappy doodads, and I think I'm gonna gather these in the same run. That way I'm not having to deal with 2 layers slipping and sliding. So I'm gonna take the raw edge of this crinkled taffeta and the selvage edge of the organza, and I'm gonna combine them together, go serge them together, and then do a running gathered stitch. The reason that I'm putting the selvage of the organza at the top is because this is woven and finished, meaning that if somebody steps on the organza, you're going to have a little more strength to stop it from ripping out. Whereas as if I put the raw edge of the organza at the top, it's a bit looser of a weave, so there's more likely of a chance of it ripping out. So let's go do that.
From there I serged the top edges of the underskirt together and added 2 lines of basting stitching to the top edge, then spent the next half hour contemplating my life choices as I gathered 6 yards of fabric down to 1/3 of its original length. Once I completed it, I set that bundle of rope burn aside. I then cut out 20 petals from the taffeta using the pattern I draped, sewed 2 pieces together, leaving the top straight edge open to turn it right side out, and ironed it. I then marked the center of the petals and aligned the edge of the next panel with the center of the previous till the petals came to form a circle of life. And then I stitched it down.
I'm a car wash.
Then I made the 2-piece yoke using a basic circle skirt pattern. However, the bottom edge was larger than the 54 inches we needed for the circumference, so I trimmed triangles off the bottom edge till it was about 28 inches for each piece. I stitched along the sides, leaving a gap just before the top edge to later thread a tie through, and then stitched along the top edge as well, leaving the bottom edges open and flipping them right side out. I then laid the petal ring on the right side of the gathered skirt, pinning it all around and massaging the gathers to fit. I pinned the bottom edge of the right side of the yoke to the right sides of the skirt, folding the seam allowances in and sewing all the way around. Go very slow here and use a strong needle, otherwise you may break it. Then I flipped the yoke lining's seam allowance over to hide the raw edges of the skirt and whip stitched it down by hand. Next was to build the skirt leaves. I moved on to the leaves, cutting out the panels I draped earlier, flipping the largest panel over and cutting it again to get the opposite side of the dress.
So I took the panel that I draped earlier, and when I laid it on the dress after seeing the petals and the underskirt on, I realized it just wasn't big enough. So as you saw, I just laid this pattern piece on my fabric and drew a much larger one. And I kind of freehanded it because I think the organic cut kind of lends to the whole organic plant dress feel. So then I took this pattern piece and flipped it over to get the reverse side. And I decided to actually put the pocket on the bottom leaf here. So the pleat on this pattern piece is actually going to become a pocket. So I'll show you how to do that one in just a second. And then this piece I just draped on top and cut it and then stuck it underneath. So this one's gonna get attached to these layers underneath. No, actually, this pattern piece is gonna get attached to this piece because it needs to lay beneath all of these and this one.
Next, I cut some bias tape to go along the edges from my lining fabric and serged them right sides together. Be careful not to stretch the tape as you go. Then I ironed the seam allowance to the inside and top stitched it close to the edge. Next, I carefully ironed out the leaf lining and pinned them right sides together, taking care that there was no wrinkles so that there was no pull or drag in the lining when it finally draped on the dress. I left excess material while pinning because the lining can shift very easily, and this makes getting it smooth much easier. When it was all pinned, I trimmed away some of the excess along the sides and then sewed it all around the perimeter, taking off even more excess from the bias tape. Then I pulled it right side out, ironed it, and making sure it was smooth again, trimmed the top edge of the leaf lining. For all the other leaves, I sewed the darts like normal. Time to make that hidden pocket. For the large bottom petal, I cut a 1/2 inch inside the dart leg and cut a pocket bag pattern, with a slice down the center of one of the pocket bag patterns that was as long as the longest dart leg on the leaf. Then I aligned the cut pocket bag right sides together with the dart legs and sewed it. Then I flipped it, ironed it, and reversed it. Then I aligned the slit pocket bag with the solid pocket bag and stitched all the way around, closing up the pocket bag. After a quick check that I was happy with everything, I applied a 2-inch wide bias tape to the top edge of the leaves to bind them together and make a channel to thread the waist tie through. I cut 3 pieces of twill tape long enough to tie around the waist plus a little extra and threaded it through the petal skirts as well as the 2 leaf skirts, and with that the skirts were done. Then I moved on to the bodice and used my Belle bodice pattern, which is now available in my shop. I cut 4 of each pattern piece except for the center front, which I cut 2 on the fold, and cut them out of a strong twill. Then I fused 1 layer of the twill pattern pieces to the fashion fabric and sewed 2 bodice layers, clipping the curves. I then applied smaller twill tape boning channels to the twill-only layers' seams and a wide twill channel at the center of the front of the bodice for a wide stiff steel to go in for bust support. I then got a little bit spacey and put the waist tape on top of the channels rather than under, but it's not a big deal. It just means that I had to go back over and stitch along the channels to sew the waist tape down. I then put the 2 layers right sides together and stitched along the back center panels. When I turned it right side out, I carefully aligned the seam allowances, pinned and stitched along the top edge, and bound the top with bias tape. I then pinned it on my dress form, stuffing the bust and hips, and draped her crisscrossing leaf overlay. I then finished filling the channels with synthetic whalebone from Burnley and Trowbridge and basted the bottom edge closed so the bones wouldn't wiggle out, making sure that all of the seam allowances were aligned.
So I made a mistake. When I was making these little flappy doodahs, I did not look at the reference art, and my producer and best friend reminded me that they're on the opposite side. So I have to completely remake these, which is super awesome.
So I took my pattern and placed it wrong sides together on my fabric, outlining my seams and darts and leaving a seam allowance when cutting. I cut the lining as well, leaving room, and sewing them right sides together, flipping and ironing them. I pinned and stitched the darts, lining and fashion layer as one since it wouldn't get seen. I then took my leaf overlays and pinned them right along the seam of the bodice, smoothing and pulling it taut over my stuffed dress form so that it would lay nicely when it was on a body. I used a ladder stitch to sew the overlay to the bodice along the seams, making sure the stitching is hidden, and used a crisscross stitch to secure the underlayer of the overlay to the top layer of the bodice, and 1 more ladder stitch to secure the top overlay. Lastly, I finished the bottom edge in more matching bias tape I made. Then I took the petals I patterned earlier, cut, sewed, flipped, ironed, and stitched them and the leaves to the neckline to keep them in place. Lastly, I added some rhinestones, a magnolia on some pinbacks, a tiara, and gloves, and this beauty was ready to go down to the bayou to find her prince. Thank you so much for making it this far. I really, really appreciate it. Now, in honor of Black History Month and all the wonderful Black men and women in my life, I wanted to put this dress up for auction, and all of the profits will be donated to Black Lives Matter. So, If you're interested in owning this dress for yourself, you can follow the eBay link in my description. Just so you know, the model in my video is around a size 6. However, the dress is actually built between a size 10 and 14 to fit a wide range of sizes. The back of the bodice will have grommets put in so that it can fit a wide range, and the waist ties also allow for maximum fit. So, hopefully I see one of you lucky folks in the dress, and thank you so much again for supporting not only my channel, but such a worthy and important cause. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much for being a part of this project with me. I really freaking appreciate it. Where can we find you on the internet?
You can find me at lroyaltyclothing.com. That's where my online store is, where you can shop my Barbie collection of clothing and lingerie. You can also find me here on YouTube at my new channel, L Royalty Clothing. The Royal Diaries is the name of my channel, and you can find me where all I talk about is fashion, fashion entrepreneurship, and the glam life of fashion. You can also find me on Instagram if you are more visual. Then just search for L.royaltyclothing.com. You can find me from there on Pinterest, Twitter, Facebook, all the other social media places. But Instagram is most visual, so I like that one kind
of. Fantastic. Angel?
Yeah, and my personal account, Angel Tenchi, on Instagram, on Facebook, also Angel Tenchi. My brand is called Angel T Apparel, which also has a IG, a Facebook, a TikTok, and it's all the same, Angel_T_Apparel. And AngelTapparel.com if you want to buy some cool light up stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Buy it.
You.
So we just got done with the Tiana shoot and it went fantastic. I can't help but feel like I forgot something. No! 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 No!